Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're doing another strategy guide for Battletech Extended 3025 mech builds, and as promised, this is the heavy mech long range build video. So we already did brawlers previously. This time we're looking at stuff that can reach out and touch you from much further away, the first one I want to look at is this Rifleman. I did say there'd be a lot of overlap in terms of the chassis we're looking at, because I am going for common chassis that you're most likely to end up with, rather than just picking out all the rare, super rare stuff and going, oh yeah, these are great, but you'll never see them. You know, so there will be overlaps in terms of the chassis that we're covering, but the builds will be very different to the builds in the Brawl video. So first of all, the Rifleman 3N, here we go. As I've said before, this is a very common variant, quite likely to be one of, if not the first heavy mech you get in your career on Battletech Extended 3025, and it's a very flexible mech. We've basically gone for my favourite go-to when it comes to, you know, trying to make efficient use of tonnage and also have long range ability. And that is to use large lasers, and we've got 3 large lasers and a single medium laser in this 60-ton Rifleman, backed up with a total of 6 heat sinks. As usual, strip the back armor down a little bit. I'm sure by now you've watched enough of my videos, if you are watching this series, to know this is my go-to, my preferred amount of rear armor on most mechs. Sometimes I'll go slightly less, sometimes I'll have slightly more, but this is the middle point where I usually try to have mechs. But yes, so 3 large lasers is good firepower for a long-range snipey type mech. It's very heat efficient as well. So I know there are people that prefer PPCs, and I do use PPCs for some of these builds that we're about to talk about, but I also make use of a lot of large lasers, because although large lasers don't have the sensor impairment effect that PPCs have, and they don't have the stability damage that PPCs have, they are lighter and they are more heat efficient. So when it comes to a mech that perhaps hasn't got loads of spare tonnage to work with, the large lasers I find are preferable, because, for example, in this Rifleman, I might only be able to get away with 2 PPCs for the build, whereas if I'm willing to use large lasers, I can get 3 large lasers and a medium laser on top for a little bit of extra punch once the enemy closes range. So that's why I like the large lasers so much. So sorry about that. I just got a follow while I'm recording a video, so sorry if you just heard that noise out of the blue. That's somebody following my channel while I'm not actually live, but because I got Streamlabs open to record this, it still picked it up. But yeah, thank you to Lord Dacky for the follow for that midway through my recording. Well, it's at the beginning, isn't it? But never mind. Right, okay, so let's move on. That's a Rifleman 3N. Now I've been slightly thrown off by that. On to the next. We have the next Rifleman 3N build. As I said, this is how it looks if you do build it with PPCs, and you'll perhaps at this point see why I prefer the large lasers, because you can't fit a 3rd PPC in this build. It's just completely not viable. So I can have 3 large lasers and a medium laser. I can't have 3 PPCs, but I can get 2 in. And I can back that up with enough heat sinks to make this work. So if you are someone that prefers PPCs, this is basically what you're looking at for the Rifleman for a good, flexible, viable build for any environment. Obviously, you know, you could make it hotter than this, add some medium lasers, something like that, if you're willing to only use it in the cooler environments, but I prefer my mechs to be flexible. So this I can use in whatever environment, and 2 PPCs, to me, it's a little bit underwhelming compared to the build we just looked at, but if this is your thing, if you like PPCs and you like large lasers, I want my PPCs, well, there you go. This is what you can do with a Rifleman with it. So let's move on quickly to the next mech. And you will recognise the Thunderbolt 5SS. I actually showed this variant off with a Brawl build. And I'm also going to show it with a long-range build as well. And this is possibly my favourite heavy long-range weapon combination, and you will see this a lot in some of the variants, and that is 4 large lasers. So while the Rifleman can't quite pull this off, that goes for 3 large and 1 medium. Once we get up to the 65-ton Thunderbolt, we can actually get away with 4 large. Now, it's a little bit on the warm side, as you can see from the heat efficiency there, and it doesn't have a huge amount of heat sinks, but also stripping the rear armor down to levels that I would say are quite risky. But if it's sitting right at the back, you don't have to worry about stuff getting behind you, because it's way away from the danger of that, and it's just sniping forwards. But yeah, 4 large lasers is a pretty devastating amount of firepower, and of course with the plus 10 damage, it's obviously 200 max damage for that. But yeah, when it comes to picking stuff off before they can reach to shoot at you, 200 damage is a good punch to have at your disposal. So there we go, that's the Thunderbolt 5SS. Now, of course, this same build gets more and more viable as the tonnage goes up, and we will see other mechs that make use of that in short order. But first, we've got the Jaeger Mech as well. Again, Jaeger Mech 6S, pretty common. And again, unsurprisingly, you can see right here I've gone for 4 large lasers, and this it does have ballistic hardpoints, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there, oh, it's a Jaeger, you've got to use the ballistics. But the thing is, if I want a purely long-range mech out of a Jaeger, any combination of weapon systems I put into this specifically for long range that include ballistics will not be as good as this right here, because it's a 65-ton mech, ballistics are heavy, plus you've got to have the ammo as well. So if I just go for the large lasers, it's heat efficient, the weapon systems are light, and there is literally nothing I can build that has a harder long range punch than 4 large lasers in this chassis. So that's what we've done there. Now, you know, you might like going for like 2 AC5s or whatever, but take your 2 AC5s. 4 large lasers beats it hands down every time. So that's what I recommend again for this, and I've already explained why large lasers are so good. They're heat efficient, they're not too heavy, and they reach pretty far. Right. Next, the Bombardier. Now, you'll have seen me do in the previous video about the heavy brawlers. I showed off a brawling Bombardier, which is one of my favorite setups in the heavy category with the 5 SRM6s. This one, on the other hand, is a long-range setup and a more classic setup, because the stock Bombardier is, of course, packing 2 LRM20s. Now, what I've done is adjusted the build. The stock build is notorious for having very low amount of ammo, so we've tweaked some things a bit to get a bit more ammo into this build, but still essentially works around 2 LRM20s there, 1 in each torso. Strip the rear down quite severely, again lower than I like to go ordinarily, but bearing in mind this is a mech that sits way at the back of your formation, it's a little bit safer to go so low. Optionally, you can reduce the arms down if you don't want to drop your back so much, but honestly, the way I see it is you're more likely to be shot across the front than the back. Say something sensor locks you, they're not going to hit you in the rear as long as you're positioned well, but they can hit you in the front and the arms, and the arms, as long as they're still attached to the mech, provide an extra location to soak up damage before you start getting hit in the more vital torso or center locations. So yeah, and again, ammo in the legs, I'm sure I've probably talked about ammo in the legs before, and I know some of you have different ideas about where ammo should go, but basically the least likely location on a mech to get hit is the head. However, I don't like putting ammo in the head, it's a little bit risky, plus you can put other gear in the head as well. After the head, the next least likely locations to be hit are the legs. That is why I put the ammo in those. Arms, they get hit, especially if something gets around your side angle. Side torsos, you don't want those getting blown up and having ammo explosions. And CT, anyone that's ever shot at a Thunderbolt, for example, knows why it's a bad idea to put ammo in your center torso. So legs are really the safest location for your ammunition, and that's why I always load up those. So here we've got 5 tons of LRM ammo. It's a little bit on the tight side. In a very long engagement you can run out of ammo and you'll find yourself having to use melee to actually do any damage, but you can punch things for 70 damage, which is respectable enough. But yeah, while it's got ammo, 2 LRM20s in a heavy mech, quite a lot of damage. Right, let's go on to the next. So here we've got a jump jet mech. So the guillotine, and I've gone for the guillotine 4L. Not the most common, but not the rarest either. I'd say they're about average. You are fairly likely to get yourself one of these without trying too hard. And yeah, it can have jump jets, which is what makes it interesting. So it's got 5 energy hard points, which is we're using 4 of those, and also 4 jump jets. So we have here a 3 large laser build with 1 medium laser backing it up. So just like the Rifleman build we showed earlier. But this is a 70-ton mech, so we've got 10 more tons to play with, and with that, we basically squeeze in some more heat sinks and a maximum amount of jump jets. So if you want a jump jetty sniper, this is a good starting point for you. The Guillotine 4L will allow you that little bit more flexibility in your movement, or to be able to kite things back, jump away, shoot, jump back, shoot, jump back, shoot. You know, you can do that with this, but it doesn't have quite as much punch as something that's packing 4 large lasers, of course. The trade-off is you do get jump jets, which is quite nice. So that's a pretty decent mech if jump jets are your thing. Right, now on to the Warhammer, and again, the most common is the 6R, as I said when I was doing the Brawler video, but the 6D is obtainable, and it is my favourite Warhammer of the Warhammers, so I'm going to use this one, and we'll just have a look at the long-range setup for this. Now, this is something that I like to do on Warhammers. I also do this on Marauders. Basically, anything that's got 6 energy hard points, you can make a reasonable... it's kind of multi-role. I guess it's a sniper to a degree, but with the 3 medium lasers as well, it's more kind of mid-range sniper. So you've got these large lasers that can reach out and touch stuff from very far away, but then if you're moving to the mid-range, the medium lasers can be brought into play as well, and 3 large plus 3 mediums is actually a pretty respectable amount of damage, and pretty heat efficient mostly as well. I mean, it doesn't look great there because a lot of the time, again, bear in mind, you're going to be firing just the 3 large lasers at your extreme range. It's only when stuff gets closer to you, because you're not usually closing to them if you're playing a long range style. You're trying to keep your distance and take them out before they get their full firepower to bear on you. But when they do get that little bit closer, you can just let rip with the medium lasers. And this is a mech that works obviously in the hotter environment, sorry, in the cooler environments that little bit better. But also if you use the pilot skill, coolant vent, then this mech becomes pretty tasty in the hands of a pilot with that ability. You're just able to flush that heat that you've built up as the enemy's closing up on you while you're firing just your 3 large lasers. Flush that heat away and then give it a full alpha with those mediums as well, and you can do some serious damage. It is backed up with 8 heat sinks as well, which is more than sufficient usually to be able to drop heat in most environments. So yeah, that's the Warhammer 6D, 3 large, 3 mediums, pretty nice, flexible, but what I would consider a long range, but more of a mid to long range build. Right, next we've got the Archer 2R, and not really going to be that surprising what we're going to do with an Archer, is it? Another mech that comes stock with LRM-20s, and that's what we've gone for here. So 2 LRM-20s, 5 tons of ammo, and in this case a medium laser. Now, I would say it's... For me, a lot of the time, I prefer to actually drop that medium laser in favour of a 6th ton of LRM ammo, because some fights end up being long, and I know not every fight is, but whenever I hit one of those longer engagements and I run out of stuff like LRM or SRM ammo, I'm like, oh damn, if only I'd taken that extra ton, that would have seen me through this fight. So, you know, I would probably more often than not go with the extra ton of LRM ammo instead of the medium laser, but you will find, like most of your engagements, this is enough ammo, and that medium laser can come in handy if stuff closes in on you. It gives you a little bit of extra punch, I suppose, although it's not very much. But yeah, it's optional, I would say, but my preference would be to switch that for an extra ton of ammo, because 2 LRM-20s is enough damage. You know, what you're using LRMs for is largely stability damage, and as you'll see here, I've got the +2 stability damage variants of the LRMs on this mech, and you use the LRMs to knock stuff over, and actually they work pretty well. Like if I've got my brawling Bombardier, for example, with the 6 SRM6s, and I've got, for a longer range mech, one of these dual LRM-20 Archers or the Bombardier pounding missiles in, the combination of these two mechs firing at something will do so much stability damage, you know. And then once you've knocked something down, you can finish them off with someone else with cooled shots, someone that hits really hard, or maybe, you know, maybe one of those laser builds for the pinpoint strike in the CT. So yeah, this is what this is for. It's for causing large amount of stability. It's not about doing large amount of damage as such. The damage comes from your other mechs after this and something else have done the stability damage to knock the enemy down. But yeah, it's a very reliable build, and Archers are 10 a penny in Battletech Extended 3025, very common in the 3025 period, so you will end up with these, and you will be able to build one of these if this is what you fancy doing with them. Now next we have the Grasshopper 5H, and you'll have seen me make one of my favourite mechs in the Brawler video with the 7 medium lasers and the 6 machine guns. Absolutely awesome Grasshopper build, and honestly, if you've only got one Grasshopper, build that one. You know, don't build this, build the other one if you've only got one Grasshopper. But if you've got Grasshoppers coming out your ears and you don't know what to do with them, or you very much dislike the close range fighting style and you definitely are adamantly sure you want to play long range, here's an option to go for and make the Grasshopper into a long range mech. Now again, it's just 2 PPCs. It's kind of underwhelming, but I've gone for the stability damage PPCs here. So, you know, again, we're playing into a strategy that's relying on knocking things down. You'll perhaps have 3 mechs that do stability damage and then 1 mech to finish them off. And that's a good way of taking out enemy mechs, is to knock them down and then take out their CT. But yeah, so this will assist that play style with the 30 stability damage PPCs, and of course they do 50 stability damage each, as well as 50 damage. If you're lucky enough to find ER PPCs in this mod, they do plus 10 damage and also get plus 30 stability damage. Now they're a little bit hotter, but yeah, if you can find yourself a couple of ER PPCs, that will work even better in this build. But this is just using standard tech rather than special stuff. But of course, with it being a Grasshopper, we've gone for jump jets as well. So backing up those 2 PPCs, you've got a bunch of heat sinks, but also the jump jets allowing you the flexibility to get to hard to reach places, jump up on big rocks, and take things out from absolutely miles away, because PPCs of course have a very long range. A maximum of 540 is pretty respectable. Not as far as an ER PPC or an ER laser, ER large laser, or a Gauss rifle, but far enough to be able to be considered an effective sniper. But yeah, so jump jets will allow you to get to those hard to reach places, perhaps impossible to reach places for some mechs that don't have jump jets, and you can protect yourself pretty effectively from brawlers that way. Yeah, and just sit there being a turret from far off. So that's the Grasshopper 5H. Right, next, Marauder 3R, very common mech in this mod. You will for sure get your hands on one of these, and there are a few ways of building this. This is not what I would say is the optimal way of building one, but it is a fun way, and if you haven't tried it, give it a shot. Like I said, this is not the best build for this chassis in my opinion, but it's something I've enjoyed in the past, and that's to just slap in 2 AC-10s, 3 tons of ammo. Now normally I recommend 2 tons of ammo per AC-10. Now you can't quite do that in this build, so you're a little bit low on ammo, but if you've got plus 10 damage variants of the AC-10, this is quite a reasonable headhunter. I would say it's not as good at headhunting as like the multiple laser builds, or the Grasshopper with the lasers and the machine guns that I've showed you in the past, but both of these weapon systems are capable of one-shot headshot kills at mechs without any damage mitigation, so it's fun. Like I said, it's not the best thing, but it does hit hard, and there's something really satisfying about seeing and hearing this shoot, just the booms that come out of it, the twin booms of the AC-10. The AC-10s as they fire, kind of fun, and it's very heat efficient, as you can see here. Look at that, like, you know, you can use this in a lunar environment and just laugh off the heat. It really is negligible. So you know, it's a good one to use in super hot environments if you struggle for heat management. But there are builds that will do much more damage at long range than this, and we will get to that in the Marauder 3R in a moment. All right, next, the mighty Stalker 4P. As you will know from my Brawl variant video, this is an amazing mech. It's not very fast, but it does hit very hard. Now, this is a slight variation on one of the builds I showed you for the Heavy Brawlers video. This, however, has 4 large lasers and is backed up by 4 medium lasers. It runs quite hot as a consequence. You can see the heat efficiency there. Now, what I recommend is the way to use this in most environments is mostly you don't fire those medium lasers, or you just fire a couple of them, you know, and your main armament is these 4 large lasers. But as and when you need it, say you need that little bit of extra punch to finish something off, or you're doing a precision strike, you really want to hurt something, or something's closed range on you and you're thinking, oh crap, I've got to kill this quick, that's when you bring these medium lasers into play. You fire the full alpha, and as you can see here, 340 max damage with the improved weapon systems. On a long-range mech is actually pretty dangerous. I know the 4 medium lasers aren't long, they're mid, but like I said, you can sit at the back, firing these 4 large lasers, doing really decent damage until the stuff closes range. And then again, I recommend using this with a pilot with coolant vent as well, so you can clear that heat and do that extra big alpha when you need it. It does have a lot of heat sinks though, so it will lose the heat. In most environments, it just looks really hot, and it is if you're going to constantly be alphaing everything. However, take this out in tundra, polar environment, or even jungle, and you can actually fire all the weapon systems quite, you know, reasonably sustained rate, and in which case it's doing monster damage, at least for something at long range. It's hard to compare long and short ranged mechs in terms of damage, because the brawlers will always have a higher damage total, but you know, they can't reach out and touch stuff from miles away as these long range things can. So it just depends how you want to play. Right, next, the Orion 1V. So this, again, the heat efficiency on paper doesn't look amazing, and of course there are various things you can do with this. You could swap those PPCs for large lasers. You could swap one PPC for a large laser and keep the other, and you know, just instantly make this a bit more heat efficient. But again, I like to use this in the neutral to cooler environments, and 2 PPCs and an AC5 is quite a nasty punch for a long range firepower. And of course the 2 PPCs mean twice the sensor impairment effect, whereas if I was to remove one of those, I'm only getting it from 1 PPC. And of course, impairing the enemy's sensors means it's harder for them to hit you back, so it can be handy, especially if you're playing a longer range game, to make use of PPCs for that purpose. You know, like blast something with PPCs and then know that already you're quite far away from them, so it's a tricky shot for the enemy, plus they've now got impaired sensors. But yeah, this is a mech I just like to use. The AC5, you only require 1 ton of ammo to keep an AC5 with enough ammo for most fights, so you know, I think that works well as a ballistic to back up the 2 PPCs. And this is a 75 ton mech. You've already seen we've done a bunch of heavy mechs that just pack 2 PPCs. This is one that packs an AC5 on top of it, and when you see it through that lens, it's pretty reasonable, you know. Yeah, that's one, like I said, I'd recommend for the cooler environments. And again, have a coolant vent pilot. And then you can, you know, every now and then drop one of the PPCs out of your firing cycle, still fire an AC5 and another PPC, and it's still doing reasonable damage at long range. So one of the things that's good about this is each of these weapon systems is a good solid hit to a single location. 60 damage from the PPCs, they're plus 10 damage versions, and the AC5, 55 damage with the plus 10 version. That's a big chunk from a single location, and if 2 or even 3 of these weapon systems all happen to hit the same location, well, you're doing pretty sick damage. You're gonna open something up, generally speaking, with that. So that's why I like that. Next, we will look at another Stalker 4P, and this is a triple PPC build. So a little bit different to that Marauder we've just looked at. Obviously, this is a slower mech, with it being the Stalker 4P, though only 165 meter sprint on it and a 95 meter move, so it is slow, but it doesn't really matter when you're packing 3 PPCs. You've got a long enough range. As long as you've got line of sight, you can shoot stuff that's very far away. You don't have to be worrying about closing the distance, but this works really well, like really well. This is very similar to the 2 PPCs and the AC5 that we've just looked at on the Orion, only instead of the AC5 we've got an extra PPC, and instead of being a little bit tight on heat and low on heat sinks, we've actually got a massive pile of heat sinks. So because essentially this is an assault mech dressed up as a heavy, so you know, it's no surprise that you're going to be able to fit so much more stuff in it. And yeah, it's great, not only for you know, single target or single location damage, but it's also great for 3 sensor impairment effects if you happen to land all 3 PPC shots on target. It's really effective, and all of these heat sinks, I mean, that is a massive amount of heat sinks, so this will sustain itself in almost any environment as well. And just a round of not firing, you can lose so much heat with this many heat sinks. And again, you can fire 3. Once you get hot, drop it down to 2, and you can probably lose a bit of heat and still fire 2. It's good. Try it. Honestly, if you're a massive fan of PPCs, try it with 3. I have heard of people doing this with 4. I recommend against that, because I think you're just far too hot with 4, but 3 is a good balanced number of PPCs for this build and this chassis. Right, now onto the Marauder 3R again. So I did say this 2 AC10 Marauder we looked at a bit ago is not the best thing I think you can do with the Marauder 3R for long range. This is far more sensible in my opinion, and I actually prefer this. And again, it's kind of similar to what we looked at on the Orion as well. And of course, anything you can do on that Orion 1V, you can also do on a Marauder 3R. That, you know, they've got energy and ballistic hardpoints. There's no real difference there. It's just the chassis I picked out of the bag to do those builds demonstrated on. But this Marauder 3R, rather than going for an AC5 and 2 PPCs, we've gone for what I see as a more sensible build, which is 2 large lasers, an AC5, and then that allows you to actually fit 2 medium lasers as well, and it's more heat efficient by far than the other build. So this, for me, when you're talking about, you know, a 75-ton long-range heavy, and if we're not talking about the Stalker, which is kind of cheating because it's like an assault mech, if we're talking just the pure kind of traditional heavies, this is what I would say is a very good long-range build. Those large lasers, I've already said many times, I'll say it again, they're light, they're heat efficient, they shoot very far, they're just good. You know, I love making use of these on my long-range builds. And then again, the AC5 out of the ballistics, you know, it can't get you a one-shot headshot kill like a +10 or +5 damage AC10 can, or an AC20, but it does shoot very far. It's got a good range, and of course, it only requires a single ton of ammo to supply it for a battle, whereas the AC10 will require 2, the AC20 will require 3. So, you know, where tonnage is an issue, it's a good ballistic weapon to throw in there. It does do a bit of stability damage, but the key thing is with the AC5 is it's very low heat. And it only generates 8 heat when you're firing this. So it's a good system, good weapon system to back up lasers. And as you'll see on this Marauder, we've used all 4 of its energy hard points. And backed it up with an AC5 as well, and yeah, I really like this. I do recommend this as a good solid long range heavy build if you've not tried it. So that's 2 large, 2 mediums, and an AC5. Alright, on to the next one. We have the Black Knight. This again from the vanilla game, and I've been building this the same way for a long time. Obviously, I've shown you the brawling variant of it that I like to build on the previous video, but this one, this is how I build a long-range Black Knight, and it's very, very straightforward. 4 large lasers and a bunch of heat sinks, bang, done. It just works nicely. 75-ton mech, no need to throw anything extra in there. It keeps it nice and heat efficient, But yeah, it's a good go-to. I've already explained why large lasers are so good. Another thing worth noting with this particular mech, why it's one of my favorites to do the large laser build in, is because all the weapons are inside torsos. Now you could put them in the arms if you want. If your pilots have got poor gunnery skill and they want to be able to hit more easily, yeah, stick it in the arms and you get a bonus to hit. But usually by the time I'm using one of these, my gunnery skill's just fine. So I prefer to put it in the side torsos where they're better protected. So you can lose your arms and you've not lost any weapons, and the side torsos, nice and safe locations to keep those precious improved large lasers that I happen to have on this build, the plus 10 damage, plus 3 accuracy. And again, these ones with the plus accuracy, doesn't really matter that they're not in the arms, does it? You've already got the weapon system itself giving you an extra chance to hit, which is nice. Okay, on to another Stalker 4P. Obviously, I did say some of these chassis are going to come up a lot because some of them are very common and you are going to end up with a lot of them, and they're very flexible in terms of what you can do with them. Now, this is a build for people that love long-range missile spam, bringing down the pain rain and all of that. This is a triple LRM-20 build, and there is no heavy mech that you can pack with as many LRM-20s as this. If you want to play the stability damage game, if you love playing long range, this is a mech for you. Obviously the rear arm is stripped down fairly low, the legs are stripped a bit as well, but it shouldn't matter. This thing sits at the back of your formation, just raining death down with the LRM-20s. Now you'll see the heat efficiency is not great, so it does suit the cooler environments better, but you can always switch off one of your LRM-20s and you're still firing 2 LRM-20s, which is good enough. But again, I recommend a pilot that has coolant vent can work very well with this if you want to keep the sustained rate of fire up. Or again, it should be fairly obvious that any of these mechs that have got 3 weapon systems in them, or 3 main weapon systems that are doing the bulk of your damage, obviously the multi-target breaching shot approach in your pilots works well, because you can fire 1 weapon system at each of 3 different targets and ignore their cover. And this again is a mech that will suit that kind of pilot down to the ground. You fire a single LRM-20 at each of 3 different targets and they're all taking maximum hurt from that because you've got breaching shot and you're laughing off their cover. Now ammo, a little bit on the tight side honestly, because with 2 LRM-20s I've got builds that use 5 tons of ammo, and in some cases I'll take 6, whereas it's got 6 tons of ammo to supply 3 LRM-20s, so you might run out in some fights. But by the time you've run out, this thing's usually done so much damage. It's done its job by that point. You know, it's caused a world of pain to the enemies with 6 tons. So yeah, it's pretty damn good. I do highly recommend this if you've never given it a try in the Stalker 4P. 3 LRM-20s. Right. Now we should be on to the final mech, and again, this is an alternative way of building the Orion. I've just arbitrarily picked the 1K for it. You can do it in any of the Orions. All the Marauders, they've all got the same weapon hardpoints. They're all 75 tons, so it doesn't make much of a difference. So I already showed you the 2 PPC 1 AC5. I showed you what I think is the best way to go with this kind of mech, which is 1 AC5, 2 large and 2 mediums. I think that's the most sensible. But another alternative is this, which is 1 AC10, 2 large lasers. So you're basically upping your ballistic into something that can one-shot kill things in the cockpit. It becomes a bit more heat efficient, but it's not got as much firepower as the Marauder version here. So all right, okay, it's got more firepower at the longer range, but this, you know, you'll find plenty of opportunity to add those medium lasers to the damage, and that's quite a significant amount of extra damage when you do. This lacks that, but it does slightly more at range if you're just purely going to try to stay back and hurt things. Again, you'll see with 3 weapon systems, it plays into multi-target breaching shot quite nicely. With this heat efficiency, you don't need a coolant vent pilot for a mech like this. It's just not really required. You can manage your heat quite fine with this. So breaching shot, multi-target breaching shot does suit this better, and yeah, again, 2 large, I think fantastic weapon systems for long range, and an AC10. I would say it's probably my favorite ballistic, because the AC-20 is cool and all that, it does huge damage, but it's very short range. The AC-5's cool, it's long range, but you can't one-shot, headshot kill things with it. The AC-10 covers that middle ground. You can use the AC-10 as a brawl weapon if you want to use it as part of a brawl setup. You can also use it as a long-range weapon if you're playing the range game, and you can one-shot, headshot kill. It's just, in my opinion, my favorite ballistic. Outside, of course, the Gauss rifle. I'm sure everybody loves the Gauss rifle, me included. That's amazing, but of course it's lost tech, so you're not going to find them everywhere. The AC-10, on the other hand, easy enough to get hold of, and of course if you've got the improved damage version, you can one-shot kill things through the cockpit. So yeah, very simple build. 2 tons of ammo to back up the AC-10, 2 heat sinks. But that's enough, actually, you know, because you're not generating that much heat with these weapon systems. 12 heat generated per shot with the AC-10, 18 for the large lasers. You know, it's not a particularly hot build, but it is a pretty good long-range build. As I said, though, I think my personal favourite would probably be this one, with the 185, 2 large and 2 mediums, just because there's almost no fight where you just purely get to play it at range and never hit that mid to short range stage. So you're always going to find you will end up with opportunities to fire these medium lasers as well, and therefore this gets that little bit of extra damage. It's not much, because obviously the AC-10 does more damage than an AC-5, but once you've added 2 improved damage medium lasers into the mix, then it gets it gets a bit better to go with this one. So that is probably out of all these various 75-ton long-range builds we've looked at, so the 2 AC-10s, the 2 PPCs AC-5, the 2 large AC-10, I'd say this one, you know, this one is the best in my opinion, just for the damage it does. And as usual, the disclaimer is I'm not saying my opinion is the one and only opinion that you should be listening to. I'm not saying the way I build these mechs is the only way of playing this game. It's absolutely not. There are so many ways of playing this game. You do it how you want, but if you're short of ideas, if you want to play the long range style with the heavy category and you've had a tough time coming up with viable builds, all I'm doing is telling you things that I've found to be very viable throughout my many hours of playing this game. I think on my last check, I'm over 1,700 hours of this game played now, so I've certainly got the experience to back up my opinions. So, and if you want to see any of these things in action, if you watch this and you think, well, all right, yeah, I'm not sure, I'd like to see that actually being used before I believe you that it's worth using, then tune into my Twitch channel. I live stream Battletech. Battletech in particular, I do 3 days a week on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, starting 3 p.m. UK time, 10 a.m. Eastern. Yeah, if you want to see these in action, I do use these in my campaigns, in my playthroughs. I also have YouTube playlists of plenty of Battletech stuff, so you know, check out any of those and you'll see me use these without doubt, depending on which mechs I have access to. But yeah, so you'll be able to see why, hopefully anyway, you'll be able to see why I rate these particular setups for the long range play style so much, yeah, I recommend checking those out if you want to actually see stuff in action. If not, yeah, let me know in the comments if you try any of these builds out, if you like how they work, if you've got any suggestions of things that you like to do and why you think that what you're doing is better or whatever. Always good to have a nice civil conversation going on in the comments, and I look forward to reading what you guys use and what you have to say. Hopefully, if you are one of those people that's lacking in experience in this mod or in Battletech in general, and you found this useful, please give me a thumbs up. It helps grow the channel, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. The next video will be the final one in this series on mech build strategy for Battletech Extended 3025, and that will be the one where we cover assault mechs. I'm very much looking forward to doing that. Assault mechs is where things go truly mental, and you're able to put in ridiculous alpha strikes worth of firepower into those. So please tune in for that. That's going to be coming very soon, and I'm sure we'll have fun looking at all the devastating builds we can make out of assaults. All right, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.